Sophia clutched her violin case tighter as a gust of autumn wind swept through the city streets. At 28, she never imagined she'd be homeless, her only possessions being a worn backpack, a change of clothes, and her precious violin. Today, she found herself wandering into a new part of the city, drawn by the towering structure of San Rafael Private Hospital. Its gleaming glass facade reflected the setting sun, giving it an almost ethereal glow. Sophia settled on a small patch of grass across from the hospital entrance. The security guard eyed her suspiciously, but said nothing as she opened her violin case and began to play. The melody started soft and melancholic, the sound of a soul searching for home. When she finally stopped playing, the sun had set completely. Looking up at the hospital windows, she noticed one window on the third floor remained brightly lit, a solitary square of light in the darkening facade. Something about that single illuminated window called to her. Sophia packed up her violin and counted the day's earnings, barely enough for a meal. But as she turned to leave, she felt a strange urge to return tomorrow. "I'll be back," she whispered to the hospital, her eyes fixed on that lone lit window. Sophia returned to the hospital every evening for 2 weeks. Hospital staff began to nod in recognition as they passed. One evening, a young nurse approached as Sophia was packing up her violin. "You play beautifully," the nurse said, offering Sophia a paper cup of coffee. "I'm Elena." "Sophia," she replied, gratefully accepting the warm drink. Elena nodded toward the hospital. "I've noticed you looking at the third floor, room 307. I didn't mean to." "It's okay," Elena interrupted. "That's Rafael Vega's room. He's been in a coma for 8 months now." The name struck Sophia like a physical blow. "Rafael Vega, the composer?" Elena nodded. "You know his work?" "Of course," Sophia whispered. "I studied his compositions before." She gestured vaguely at herself. "He was in a car accident," Elena continued. "The doctors aren't optimistic, but some of us haven't given up hope." That night, Sophia searched for Rafael Vega's music on her phone, the one luxury she maintained by charging it in public libraries. The next evening, she returned with purpose and began to play Rafael's own compositions. The notes floated up toward his window, a musical offering to a man lost in darkness. 3 weeks into her nightly performances, rain poured relentlessly from a black sky. Drenched and shivering, Sophia found shelter under a small awning near the hospital entrance and began to play Rafael's most poignant composition, Echoes of Silence. Inside room 307, Nurse Elena was checking Rafael's vitals when she noticed something on the monitor. A slight fluctuation in his brain activity. Nothing dramatic, but different from the flat patterns of the past 8 months. Elena moved to the window and peered out through the rain. There was Sophia, soaked to the bone, playing her heart out. She looked back at the monitor, then at Rafael's face. Had his eyelid just fluttered? By the time a doctor arrived to check, Rafael's readings had returned to normal. "Probably just a glitch in the equipment," he said dismissively. But Elena wasn't convinced. She watched Sophia from the window, a wild thought forming in her mind. Could this homeless violinist somehow be reaching Rafael when nothing else had? "Wait," Elena called out to Sophia, holding an umbrella. "Something happened while you were playing. His brain activity changed." Sophia stared at her, the violin case suddenly heavy in her hands. "What are you saying?" "I don't know yet," Elena replied, "but I think you should keep playing." Over coffee in the hospital cafeteria, Elena and Sophia formed an unlikely friendship. Elena in her crisp nurse's uniform, and Sophia in her weathered clothes, sharing a common purpose. "Rafael. I'm actually his cousin," Elena admitted. "I requested to be assigned to his care. His family stopped visiting after the first few months." She showed Sophia a photo of Rafael before the accident. A handsome man in his early 30s with intense eyes, seated at a grand piano. "He was working on something revolutionary before the accident," Elena continued. "He called it Awakening, said it would change how people experienced music. But the composition was never completed." Sophia studied the photo. feeling a strange connection to this man she'd never met. "Do you have any of his notes on the piece?" Elena shook her head. His apartment was cleared out months ago. Whatever notes existed are probably gone now. Sophia gradually shared pieces of her own story. Her promising start as a classical violinist, the abrupt end of her career to care for her dying mother, and her descent into homelessness. "I actually had a chance to work with Raphael once," Sophia confessed. "I was invited to audition for his project, but my mother's condition worsened that week. I never went." That night, as Sophia played outside the hospital, Elena watched the monitors carefully. Again, there was a subtle change in Raphael's brain patterns. "He hears you," Elena whispered to herself. "Somehow, he hears you." 5 years. Ago, Sophia had been a rising star at the conservatory. Then came her mother's diagnosis: aggressive pancreatic cancer. Without hesitation, Sophia put her career on hold to become her caretaker. The medical bills mounted relentlessly. Sophia sold her apartment, then her car, then most of her possessions. She kept only her violin, a gift from her mother on her 18th birthday. "Promise me you'll keep playing," her mother had whispered in her final days. "No matter what happens, the music is who you are." After her mother's death, Sophia tried to rebuild her life, but the momentum was gone. Crippling debt led to eviction. Gradually, the streets became her home, her violin her only means of survival. One afternoon, Dr. Vargas, Raphael's attending physician, approached Elena at the nurse's station. "I need to speak with Raphael's family," he said coldly. "It's been 8 months with no improvement. The hospital is questioning the allocation of resources." After he left, Elena rushed to find Sophia. "They're talking about removing life support," she said, her voice breaking. "We need to prove he's responding to the music." For the first time since her mother's death, Sophia felt a fierce determination. She wouldn't let Raphael's music die without a fight. While on night shift, Elena accessed Dr. Vargas's office, scanning through Raphael's medical records. The doctor had been added as Raphael's physician just 2 months ago, replacing his original doctor who had taken an unexpected sabbatical. Further, digging revealed something disturbing. Dr. Vargas had communicated several times with Xavier Moreno, a rival composer who had publicly feuded with Raphael. In one email, Vargas mentioned acquiring rights to unpublished works once certain medical decisions were made. "It's about his music," Elena whispered to Sophia. "They want rights to his unfinished compositions." Together they formed a desperate plan. They needed medical evidence of Raphael's responses to Sophia's music, proof that his brain was still active, still fighting to return. Elena approached Dr. Lucas, a young neurologist who occasionally expressed doubts about Dr. Vargas's methods. After hearing their suspicions, he cautiously agreed to help. For 3 nights, Sophia played directly beneath Raphael's window, while Dr. Lucas monitored his brain activity. The results were stunning. Raphael's brain showed clear responses to his own compositions when played by Sophia, patterns suggesting recognition and emotional processing. Their triumph was short-lived. On the 4th night, Dr. Vargas caught them conducting their unauthorized experiment. His face flushed with anger as he confiscated Dr. Lucas's notes. "This is a serious breach of protocol," he snapped. "Ms. Reyes, you're suspended pending review. And you," he pointed at Sophia, "are trespassing. Security will escort you out." As security led Sophia away, she looked back at Raphael's window, fear clutching at her heart. Without access to him, how could she help? Sophia paced outside the hospital gates, prevented from entering by security guards. Elena managed to sneak out during her lunch break, meeting Sophia at a nearby cafe. "Vargas moved up the family meeting," she said quietly. "It's scheduled for next Friday, and Dr. Lucas has been reassigned to another floor." "Have you seen Raphael's readings?" Sophia asked. "Has there been any change?" Elena nodded grimly. "His brain activity has decreased since you stopped playing. It's like he's slipping away again." Under the cover of darkness, they met Dr. Lucas in a small park across from the hospital. Despite his professional risk, the young neurologist seemed energized by their cause. "I've been reviewing the data we collected," he explained. Raphael's responses weren't just to any music. They were specifically strongest to his own compositions, especially when played by Sophia. That night, they positioned Sophia on a small hill overlooking the hospital, just beyond security's jurisdiction. Dr. Lucas smuggled in a sensitive microphone, placing it near Raphael's window, while Elena monitored the brain activity readings. For 5 consecutive nights, they repeated the experiment, gathering evidence of Raphael's responses. Dr. Lucas documented everything meticulously, building a case that couldn't be dismissed as coincidence. On the 6th night, Dr. Vargas discovered their new arrangement. Furious, he had security expand their patrol area and threatened to call the police if Sophia was spotted anywhere near hospital grounds. "We're running out of time," Elena told Sophia. "The family meeting is in 2 days. We need something more." Elena risked her job to access the hospital's storage room, searching through Raphael's personal belongings. Among his items, she found his phone still functional after charging. Protected by a password, the phone initially resisted her attempts. On impulse, she tried "Awakening," the title of his unfinished masterpiece. The screen unlocked. Elena discovered audio recordings labeled "Awakening Drafts," along with musical notation photos. She copied everything to a USB drive with trembling hands. That evening, Sophia listened intently to Raphael's recordings. The fragments were brilliant but incomplete, like puzzle pieces without the full picture. "It's revolutionary," Sophia whispered. "He's blending classical structures with something entirely new, but it's unfinished. Can you complete it?" Elena asked. "Use what's there to build the rest?" Sophia stared at her aghast. "Complete a Rafael Vega composition? That's impossible." "You understand his music better than anyone," Elena insisted. "And we're out of options. The family meeting is tomorrow." Throughout the night, Sophia worked feverishly, transcribing Raphael's fragments, analyzing his patterns, searching for the connecting threads of his musical vision. By dawn, she had pieced together something that followed his compositional logic, while incorporating her own understanding of where the music wanted to go. "I need to play this for him," Sophia said. "Not from a distance. I need to be in his room." The day of the family meeting arrived with an unexpected ally, a violent thunderstorm that lashed the city with torrential rain. In a staff bathroom, Elena helped Sophia transform. Her long hair tucked under a surgical cap, face partially obscured. By a mask, Sophia wore scrubs and an ID badge borrowed from a friend of Dr. Lucas. "The meeting starts at 4, Elena whispered. "Vargas will be presenting his case to withdraw care. We need to time this perfectly." They moved through the hospital corridors, Sophia keeping her head down, following Elena's lead. As they approached Raphael's floor, Elena's pager beeped urgently. "It's Lucas," she said. "The meeting has started early. Vargas is already showing the family Raphael's charts." They rushed to room 307, slipping inside just as thunder shook the building. The room was dimly lit, silent except for the steady beeping of monitors. And there, lying still and pale, was Rafael Vega. Sophia removed her violin from its case with reverent hands. She positioned herself near Raphael's bed and began to play Awakening, first his original fragments, then gradually transitioning into her completed version. Through the window, lightning flashed in synchronization with a crescendo in the cello music. She was so lost in the performance that she almost missed it, a slight movement from the bed. Raphael's fingers twitched in time with the music. On the monitor, his brain activity spiked dramatically. The door burst open. Dr. Vargas stood there, his face contorted with anger. Behind him stood a small group of people, Raphael's family, and the hospital administrator. "What is the meaning of this?" Dr. Vargas demanded. But all eyes were fixed on Raphael, whose fingers continued to move subtly, tapping against the sheets in rhythm with Sophia's playing. "This is unauthorized," Dr. Vargas began, but the hospital administrator silenced him with a raised hand. "Look at the monitors," the administrator said, moving closer to Raphael's bed. The brain activity display showed patterns unlike anything they'd seen in 8 months. Complex, responsive, undeniably conscious. Sophia continued playing, reaching the final movement of the composition. As the melody built toward its climax, Raphael's eyelids fluttered. A collective gasp filled the room. Dr. Lucas pushed through the doorway. "We've been documenting his responses to music for weeks." He handed the administrator a folder of data. "Ms. Rodriguez has been the catalyst." One of the family members, an older woman, approached Sophia. "Please," she said, "don't stop playing." Sophia nodded and continued, though her arms ached. She played as Raphael's breathing pattern changed, as his eyelids fluttered more insistently. When she finally reached the end of the composition, the room fell into silence. For several heartbeats, nothing happened. Then Raphael's eyes opened, just briefly, unfocused, before closing again. The room erupted in commotion. Medical staff rushed in, checking vitals, adjusting equipment. Dr. Vargas stood frozen by the door, his career visibly crumbling. Elena grabbed Sophia's arm, pulling her away from the growing crowd. "You need to go," she whispered. "Vargas will look for someone to blame." With trembling hands, Sophia packed her violin. She cast one last look at Raphael, now surrounded by medical professionals. Had she really reached him? Had her music brought him back? 3 weeks later, Raphael Vega opened his eyes and remained conscious. The medical team called it a miracle. The media called it a medical mystery. No one, except Elena and Dr. Lucas, publicly credited the homeless violinist who had disappeared after that stormy night. Raphael's awakening was just the beginning. He recognized no one, remembered nothing of his accident, and struggled to piece together his identity. Only music seemed to trigger something deep within him, particularly violin pieces. "He knows the music but can't remember composing it," Elena told Sophia during their weekly coffee meetings. Sophia had found temporary shelter at a women's hostel and picked up work playing at wedding receptions, a step up from street performances. "Does he know about me?" she asked hesitantly. Elena shook her head. "We've been advised not to overwhelm him with too much information." What Elena didn't share was how Raphael would sometimes hum a melody, the same melody Sophia had created to complete his unfinished composition. A piece he couldn't possibly remember, yet somehow did. During physical therapy, Raphael insisted on attempting to play the piano. His fingers, weak and uncoordinated, nevertheless found specific chord progressions, fragments of awakening that seemed embedded in his muscle memory. "There's something I need to finish," he told his therapist. "Someone was helping me." Meanwhile, Sophia found a music therapy program looking for assistance. Her experience with Raphael became her most valuable qualification, though she anonymized the story during her interview. As autumn turned to winter, both rebuilt their lives separately, unaware that the melody connecting them continued to play beneath the surface of their separate realities. 3 months after regaining consciousness, Raphael was transferred to a rehabilitation center specializing in brain injury recovery. His progress had been remarkable. He could walk with assistance and play simple compositions on the piano. The rehabilitation center organized a small recital for patients using music in their therapy. Elena saw an opportunity. "He's giving a recital next Thursday," she told Sophia. "It's small, just for patients and staff, but I could get you in." Sophia hesitated. "Would that be wise? I don't want to disrupt his recovery." "You wouldn't have to speak to him," Elena assured her. "Just be in the audience." That Thursday, Sophia sat in the back row of the small performance space, her heart pounding. Several patients performed before Raphael was wheeled onto the stage. A physical therapist helped him to the piano bench. He began to play without introduction. The piece started simply, then gradually increased in complexity. Sophia's hands clenched in her lap as recognition dawned. He was playing portions of Awakening, the very composition she had completed for him. As the piece reached its emotional peak, Sophia found herself crying silently. The music spoke of loss, of darkness, but also of an emergence into light, exactly what she had tried to convey in her completion of his work. Raphael's fingers faltered, briefly. He looked up, scanning the audience as if searching for something. His eyes passed over Sophia, then snapped back, locking with hers across the room. For one breathless moment, they stared at each other, the composer and the violinist. Connected by music neither fully understood, Raphael continued playing, his gaze fixed on Sophia, his fingers finding their way with new certainty. Elena appeared at Sophia's side. "He wants to meet you," she said quietly. "He doesn't know why, but he's insisting." In a quiet corner of the rehabilitation center's garden, Sophia sat across from Raphael. Despite the December chill, he had insisted on meeting outside, away from curious eyes. "I know you," he said without preamble. "I don't remember you, but I know you." Sophia nodded, unsure how to respond. "My cousin says you're the one who played for me," Raphael continued, "that your music somehow reached me when nothing else could." "I played your compositions," Sophia explained. "Outside your hospital window." Raphael's brow furrowed. "The melody I just played. It feels like mine, but not entirely. There's something else in it, another voice intertwined with my own." Sophia took a deep breath. "You were working on a piece called Awakening before. Your accident, it was unfinished. I found some of your drafts and attempted to complete it." She expected disbelief or anger. Instead, Raphael closed his eyes, nodding slowly. "That explains why it feels both familiar and foreign," he murmured. "Why did you do it? Why play for a stranger in a coma?" Sophia hesitated. How could she explain the inexplicable connection she'd felt? "Music was all I had left," she said finally. "And all you had left too, it seemed necessary." Something in Raphael's expression shifted. A flash of recognition that transcended his memory loss. "You're a violinist," he stated with certainty. "Yes, a good one," Sophia smiled faintly. "I used to be." Elena later told Sophia about Raphael's doctor. "Dr. Vargas has been suspended. He was working with someone who wanted rights to your unfinished work." As winter deepened, Sophia began visiting Raphael regularly, bringing her violin. Together, they explored Awakening, his original vision blending with her completion, evolving into something new as his strength and memory gradually improved. By spring, Raphael had progressed enough to be discharged from the rehabilitation center. He moved into a modest apartment where outpatient therapy would continue. His recovery, while remarkable, remained incomplete. One constant was music, particularly the composition that he and Sophia worked on during her visits. Awakening had become their shared language. Sophia continued her work with the music therapy program. Her own circumstances had improved dramatically. She now rented a small room and had begun rebuilding her life. Then, without warning, Sophia stopped visiting. Her phone went unanswered. She seemed to have vanished as mysteriously as she had appeared in Raphael's life. "Something must have happened," Raphael insisted to Elena. "She wouldn't just disappear." Despite his limited mobility, Raphael began searching for Sophia throughout the city. He visited the spot outside the hospital where she used to play. He checked shelters and hostels. He asked street musicians if they recognized the talented violinist. His search became part of his therapy, physically challenging but emotionally necessary. Each expedition strengthened his body while the mission gave focus to his fragmented mind. "I don't even know why this matters so much," he confessed to Dr. Lucas. "I barely know her, yet I feel this absence. The brain forms connections in mysterious ways after trauma," Dr. Lucas replied. "Your bond with Sophia was formed during your emergence from coma." "It's more than that," Raphael insisted. "The music we created together, it wasn't just therapy. It was something neither of us could have created alone." One rainy afternoon, Raphael sat exhausted on a park bench. A street performer sheltered under a nearby tree playing a saxophone. "I'm looking for someone. A violinist," Raphael said after leaving a tip. Plays classical, some original compositions. She was homeless for a while. The saxophonist's expression changed. Tall woman, dark hair, plays like she's got the whole orchestra inside her violin? Raphael's heart leapt. Yes, that's Sophia. Have you seen her? Not recently, but there's a benefit concert tomorrow night at St. Mark's Community Center for homeless musicians. If she's still in the city, she might be there. St. Mark's Community Center was packed beyond capacity. Raphael arrived early, securing a seat near the front, despite difficulty navigating with his cane. He scanned each performer anxiously, but as the evening progressed, there was no sign of Sophia. During intermission, he approached the event organizer. "I'm looking for a violinist who might be performing tonight," he explained. "Sophia Rodriguez?" The woman consulted her list. "No Sophia on the program, but we do have a last-minute addition, just listed as S." As the second half began, Raphael leaned forward, scrutinizing each new performer. Finally, the MC announced, "Our last performer, who prefers to remain anonymous, will play an original composition." The stage went dark. When the lights rose again, a single figure stood center stage, violin poised under her chin. Sophia. She wore a simple black dress, a far cry from the weathered clothes Raphael had first seen her in. Without introduction, she began to play. The melody started softly, then gradually built in complexity and emotion. Raphael recognized it immediately. Awakening, but evolved, transformed. The audience sat spellbound as Sophia's violin sang of darkness and light, of loss and discovery. Raphael closed his eyes, letting the music wash over him. In those notes, he heard pieces of himself he had forgotten. As Sophia approached the final movement, her eyes found Raphael in the audience, and a smile transformed her face. The music shifted subtly, incorporating motifs that only he would recognize, private musical conversations they had shared. When the final note faded, there was a moment of profound silence before the audience erupted in applause. Raphael made his way slowly to the stage. The MC approached Sophia with the microphone. "Would you like to say something about your composition?" Sophia nodded. "This piece is called Awakening. It began as someone else's vision, a brilliant composer whose work I admired. When circumstances brought us together, the composition evolved into a conversation between two musical voices." She looked directly at Raphael. "I disappeared because I needed to find my own voice again, to be sure that what I felt was real, not just gratitude. I needed to stand on my own before I could truly stand beside someone else." Raphael climbed the steps to the stage. "The music was always yours too," he said. "I couldn't have finished it without you." Sophia extended her hand, helping him to center stage. To the bewildered audience, the MC explained, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Rafael Vega, the renowned composer who miraculously recovered from an 8-month coma last year. Would you?" Sophia hesitated, then offered Raphael her violin. "Would you like to share our composition properly, together?" Raphael shook his head gently. "I'm still relearning the piano, but perhaps..." He turned to the audience. "Is there a pianist who might accompany this exceptional violinist? I'll guide the interpretation." A young woman volunteered. Under Raphael's direction, and with Sophia's violin soaring above, they performed Awakening, no longer a solo piece but a duet. As the final notes resonated, Raphael turned to Sophia. "You brought me back," he said simply, "not just from the coma, but to myself, to music." Sophia's eyes glistened with tears. "And you gave me purpose when I had none, a reason to keep playing when I'd lost everything else." As they took their bows, Raphael whispered, "What happens now?" Sophia smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "We keep composing," she replied, "together."
What hidden melodies might be playing in your life right now, waiting to be heard? This story reminds us that sometimes our greatest transformations come through unexpected connections. When we're brave enough to play our music, even when no One seems to be listening. Sophia and Raphael's journey shows us how art can transcend physical limitations, how persistence can overcome seemingly impossible obstacles, and how two broken lives can create something beautiful together. Have you ever experienced a moment when music or art touched you deeply, or when a stranger's kindness changed your path in ways you couldn't imagine? Perhaps you've been the one whose talents helped someone else heal or find their way forward. Share your story in the comments below. What melodies are you playing for the world, and what unexpected harmonies have you discovered? Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And remember to subscribe for more stories that explore the extraordinary moments that transform ordinary lives.